Welcome to Sequencing Stories, a podcast exploring the diverse and impactful intersections of genetics in our lives. I'm your host, Dr. Jeremy Koenig. Today's guest is Barby Ingle, a passionate advocate for chronic pain patients and the founder of the International Pain Foundation. With over 20 years of experience navigating the complexities of rare disease and chronic pain, Barby shares her personal journey and her mission to improve healthcare for those affected by rare conditions. In this episode, we explore Barby's personal journey with chronic pain and rare disease, highlighting her challenges and triumphs, and how she leveraged DNA sequencing to forge her path to a solution that was pain-free. We uncover the future of genetic testing in healthcare with a special focus on how Sequencing.com is making individualized care more accessible through the whole genome. Listeners can expect to learn about the transformative power of genetic insights, the importance of advocacy, and how these efforts are shaping the future of medicine. This matters because it not only informs, but also empowers individuals to take proactive steps in their health journey. Barby Ingle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a long time coming. We've had great conversation over the last few months. I think in particular, what was it? We were introduced during Rare Disease Month.
Yes.
I think is how we made contact. And I'm really excited to dive into your journey and the the International Pain Foundation, this initiative that you founded, that you spearheaded, and has reached like an impressive, let's say, quorum in terms of helping to wrap our arms around the rare disease community. Because I know it's not, well, you guys it seems to be rare disease agnostic insofar as bringing together many folks who are suffering, from unique challenges in their genes. So really interested to hear about the foundation. And as I always like to do on these conversations, I'm, most interested in the human element of the story. And so what I'd love to do is, to get a sense of, your journey to, chronic pain management, the solution that you've been able to find for yourself and empower with others. So maybe you could just share with us your personal journey that led you to the field of chronic pain management in general. And, what were some of those pivotal moments in your transition to founding this initiative?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. And I have a long journey, over 20 years of living with rare disease and chronic pain. And my journey that I didn't realize I was on a journey. I developed endometriosis in my 20s and went through treatments and surgeries and medications and ended up having a full hysterectomy. And I thought I conquered the world. And I ended up at 29 developing a rare disease after a minor car accident. And then I realized endometriosis is rare. However, I developed something even more rare, and it opened up my eyes to the world of rare diseases and how messed up our medical system is, and that there was advancements coming down the pipeline, but the information wasn't getting out to patients, providers, caregivers, and that something had to be done. And that 8-second car accident that triggered the rare disease to start attacking my body really took away my whole life. And I saw 43 doctors before I got a proper diagnosis. And I spent about 7 years bedbound and wheelchair bound. And finally, 3 years after developing reflex sympathetic dystrophy, and it's known by 20 names, but that's the name I prefer, RSD, I had to figure out a way to stop being overtreated, undertreated, and mistreated. And it took 7 years to get a treatment. And I'm lucky to have a treatment because there's over 7,000 rare diseases. As you said, we work with so many of those rare diseases through the International Pain Foundation. So I've got to learn about a lot of them. And I'd say I'm really knowledgeable in about 160 of them, which is probably more than a lot of rare disease doctors. But this has been my life, and I knew that I had to do something to make a difference. And just going through the process of that overtreatment, undertreatment, and mistreatment, and finding things that can help me, part of that ended up being looking at my genetics and seeing what I'm made of, and how checking those things out on a scientific level has helped my daily life and my daily living, and also helped my medical providers find treatments that are more beneficial for me, what helps me. And that's kind of what got me here today, and why I started the foundation, because for so long I was struggling to get the help I needed. I wanted other people to be able to find help before they had to struggle as bad as I did.
Wow. I mean, incredible story. I've got a ton of questions I want to ask explicitly about, the journey, because, frankly, it sounds like the classic entrepreneur's journey where it's like, I solved this problem for myself and now I want to bring it to the world.
Yeah.
So I'd love to, dive into that a little more. Maybe if you could just talk a little bit about the foundation, like when did you found that? How many members strong are you? Tell me a little bit about the 100 plus rare disease community or rare diseases that you become expert in. Like, let's just say your top 3, and let's see where that goes.
Okay. So the foundation was created in 2006, and I come from a very entrepreneurial family, and also a family that gives back to the community. And so growing up, every Thanksgiving, we would come up with an idea. And between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we would perform a charity service. And it could be going to the nursing homes in the area and being with people who don't have family during holidays, or serving food at a food bank, or wrapping presents for people that had trouble with arthritis or other conditions. And in 2006, my stepsister passed away from the same disease, reflex sympathetic dystrophy, also known as algoneurodystrophy, or some people have it regionally, so they call it complex regional pain. And I have full body involvement, so algoneurodystrophy, or RSD, or what I call it. And my older brother said, "Hey, we need to help people that are going through the same challenges Barbie's going through. If she's having trouble and she's so resourceful and does her organizing and her research to get the best care, and she's having this much trouble, other people must be having this much trouble." So my husband and my family and I got together and we started the International Pain Foundation. And at the first year of service with the foundation, we only help people with my condition. And then we quickly realized there's so many people living with rare diseases that cause intractable chronic pain, and that there was more people in need of help, and we could provide those services. And to name like the top 3 conditions, I would say the ones that come to mind: 4q deletion syndrome, which is a genetic condition when the patient is missing their 4q genome or gene. And then there's also conditions like arachnoiditis and Quadia equina syndrome. And oh my goodness, I would say those are like top 3 on my mind right at the moment. But there's so many conditions that, even endometriosis, like I said before, is one that I face personally, but most people don't recognize that it is a rare disease because it's only in women. And typically with rare diseases, people don't know the names of the diseases. Endometriosis is one that has gotten a little bit more media attention. And that's part of what the foundation does: education, awareness, social events, and access to care. And we've done many different campaigns around the different diseases, and include, I don't know if you want to hear about some of our projects yet, but the biggest project that I run is called Nervember, Nervember, and it's during the month of November. And I created it during October 2009. I was on a plane, and the plane turned everything pink, Pinktober. And I said, we need this for rare diseases that involve nerve pain, and people need to know about these conditions. And I took an extra napkin from the flight attendant, and started writing down ideas, and flying from the East Coast to the West Coast. By the time I got off the plane, I had napkins full of ideas and came up with the word Nervember, and came home and trademarked it, and said, we're going to do this big project, and introduce it to the rest of the board of directors. And it took off. And the first few years, we had hundreds of people, and then went to tens of thousands. And the last few years, we've had about 60 to 70 million interactions on social media during the month of November to raise awareness about the conditions that involve nerve pain. Most of them are rare diseases, and we do 2 diseases a day, and every year we switch up the diseases so that we're not doing the same diseases every year. We're switching it up and bringing in new rare diseases that people haven't heard of.
Wow. So, I mean, you inadvertently answered my question around where did the foundation come from and how many members strong are you? And it sounds like you probably have a core member base, but it sounds like you're reaching tens of millions of people in terms of, rare disease awareness.
Absolutely. And over the years, I found it's really important to get out of our silo. And if we want to find solutions and cures and new treatments and things to come down the pipeline, we have to get out of what is comfortable and talk to people who wouldn't normally hear, because we can bounce ideas off of each other and say, hey, these things are coming down the pipeline. How does this impact or affect what we have today? How do we bring it into the future to make it a valuable tool that we all can use? And in doing that, getting out of our silos and reaching people that wouldn't normally hear, we're able to take it in different directions and create a multi-pronged approach, which is better to treat something than just having one piece of data or a few pieces of data. The bigger and larger we can make it, the better it is for everybody going forward in healthcare.
Got it. Well, it's interesting, talking to you, I'm reminded of some of my conversations with the folks over at the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Have you come across them?
I have.
Have you met Lisa?
I have a few patients, but not that organization.
Okay. Yeah, remind me after our conversation. I think it's critical that I introduce you to Lisa, the founder, CEO there. Herself, struggles with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, has had a full transplant, and then there's not just that rare disease. I'm sure as you know, it's there's all the other things in our genomes, the call them the silent passengers that once we know and understand the variants that we have, we can put together a plan to outsmart our genes. But as I mentioned, we connected in the rare disease month awareness, which again, what was that? It was in February.
February, yes.
And and so I've probably talked to 100 different founders or advocates since I started the outreach during that time. And one of the things that I learned was, again, communicated from the individuals I spoke to affiliated with these organizations. What I learned was, it seems to me there are 3 groups of or initiatives that each of the organizations consistently are focused on. Number one, call it the patient advocacy, like getting the individual to the end of this diagnostic odyssey, right? So detecting the full list, if you will, the full inventory of the pathogenic markers that the individual carries, and connecting the individual with their caregiver, which is number 2. It seemed to be, well, we need to do some more awareness in the insofar as the expert practitioners are concerned, and there are a lot of folks who are expert practitioners who are getting involved and helping that community, because it really is like a precision medicine approach. The third was more on the therapeutics. So how do we wrap our arms around this community? How do we empower them to do their own research, to make the development of therapeutics possible? Like, what are the economies of scale? Like, how do we amortize a lot of the costs associated with setting up these research projects for the development of therapeutics? And so this all to come full circle, it seems to me, again, as mentioned by the different heads of organizations that I spoke to, there seems to be a huge opportunity to identify the points of redundancy. I think a lot of folks are building the technology de novo for member registries of electronic medical health data, and it just seems like, just if we could amortize the cost associated with collecting and organizing the rare disease community's data, that in and of itself could accelerate us to the discovery of therapeutics and, move it forward, not just years, but maybe decades. And because there's so many of these small, discrete populations, and I think people feel isolated and siloed. And I love that you're branching out, because one of the things that occurred to me was, well, in terms of somebody having a rare disease versus somebody being a carrier of a rare disease versus somebody knowing somebody with a rare disease, I mean, it actually extends to the whole population once you start to break down those silos. So
Yes.
yeah.
I didn't mention this before, but I went through breast cancer and I had a lumpectomy. But I had gone to my doctor and said I'm having these symptoms, and he ordered me to get some testing done and to go on to an oncologist. And I just put the papers aside and didn't really get back to it. And I had ordered an Ancestry 23andMe and test, and it gave me some information about who's related to me, but it had this data file attached to it. And I heard you could take that data file, download it, and upload it and find out more about your health. And when I did that process, I got so much more information about my genetics, and that when I got the results back 9 times, it said BRCA2, which is something that you look for in breast cancer. And so then I was like, oh, I better go to my oncologist and I better get that test done that my doctor had ordered. And seeing the DNA of what was going on with me, and then having the doctor say, this test that you ended up getting is a good start, but it's not the best test for you. So I'm going to send you to a genetic counselor, and we're going to do further genetic testing and see what's going on. And it broke it down to PALB2, breast cancer variant, and gave me so much more data and information. So realizing and understanding that just because you have this source doesn't mean that it's the full story or a full genome sequencing. It's this part of it, and it gets you started down the right path. But really seeing everything in my genomics was really eye-opening and important for me, and saying, okay, this is the type of breast cancer that you have. Here's the type of treatment that we're going to need to do. This is what you need to pay attention to. You need to also let any other females in your family know about what you have with this, and let them know about it so that they can get tested. It's really important to have that genetic testing and data. And that is kind of where we're moving.
Right.
And with the foundations, with the research, there's 10 new genetics tests that come online every day with over 175,000 tests. What's the right one to do? Well, if you have access to one that can give you the full genome sequencing for you, and you can get individualized care based on that, it's like watching Star Trek and seeing the patient go into the doctor's bay and they scan their body and go, this is what you need. It's so great to have that additional information and give your doctors, like I said, it took 43 doctors to get a proper diagnosis for me. Had I been able to go in with genetics testing and information, they would have had a better place to start from.
That's incredible. So let me just back up, make sure I understood this completely. So you had previously done 23andMe or Ancestry or both?
Ancestry.
Ancestry. Okay. Yeah. And then, you uploaded this to Sequencing.com and ran your analysis.
And then a platform similar to Sequencing.com.
Yeah.
But Sequencing.com does even better. I did this a few years ago. But Sequencing.com gives you so much more data even than what was available in 2016, 2017. And so, and it's easier to digest. As a patient, when I first got my results back, I'm like, what am I looking at? Who can explain this to me? It's not making sense. Having that ability now is to see the data and understand it is helpful for the patient, the provider, the genetic counselor that my oncologist sent me to. It literally has changed how I get treated, and my medications changed. What was right for me, do we do a surgery for this, or do we do a medication, or a combination of both? They could individualize it to me and what I need. And I no longer felt like a horse or a zebra in a field of horses, and I was getting the same foods and drink and everything as the horses. I now could get what I needed as Barbie instead of
Right.
everybody in the field got.
Okay. So it's a couple of things here because we're at a really exciting time in the DNA industry where, maybe 10, 20 years ago when the folks at 23andMe and Ancestry DNA came on the scene, which, I'm grateful that they did. They did a lot of pioneering work around, the logistics and making sequencing more cost effective. Actually, if you can consider for a moment that the first genome cost around $3 billion. Now today we're talking like $399 for your whole genome sequence. It is, yeah. And so we go back to those earlier providers, and they were effectively providing a service of ancestry, and that was the extent of their offering with a few wellness traits. And but as because it seems you're so technically savvy, you downloaded the raw data file. And you saw that, this array data that they had, which was a few 100,000 markers, had actually a lot more information there that wasn't being reported on. And, so what's interesting, it's important to make that distinction.
Yeah.
Companies like 23andMe and Ancestry in anything that's not whole genome sequencing is giving you about 0.1% of your DNA versus, whole genome sequencing, the offer that Sequencing.com has put together for the International Pain Foundation, for example, utilizes the whole genome sequencing to provide access, to our CAP and CLIA certified labs. And then this gives you that 100% access to DNA, providing that essential insight for the individualized treatment plans that you can bring to your physician, as you mentioned. And then ultimately improving overall family health management, as you just said, is like, well, you need to communicate this to all of your relatives.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's pretty amazing. And then, one of the things you mentioned is, well, how do you make sense of the data? And so the nice thing is with the whole genome sequencing, it's like, okay, you just sequence once and then you're done and that's it. So it's really sequence once, but then we've got this, software on top of it. So it's sequence.
I love this. When I saw your platform, I was like, this is exactly what people need to see and understand, not just your medications, but like what are you facing now? What could potentially be something you have to face in the future? And what do you do now to prepare for whatever that is? Whether it's like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, there's 14 types. Some of them are genetic, some of them aren't. If it shows up in your genetics, what can you do to fix it so that you don't have the severe challenges that you would have had? And if you're facing the challenges now, what can you do with the medications we have online? And what's coming down the pipeline? Like you said, you have your data. Whatever comes down the pipeline, your data can be put into that system and see, is this new treatment going to be more effective for me than the one I'm on? Or is it going to be less effective? And do I stay with what I'm at? And seeing that and going forward with that, I think for me, and one of the things I push for now here in Arizona, I'm working on legislation and I'm actually running for a legislative position. But one of the things that I pushed for over the last couple of years through legislation is testing for newborns. And if babies could have a full genome sequencing at birth, imagine the data that they would have for the rest of their life to better their whole future, their health care, their day-to-day living, their prevention and preventative care, and understanding what's right for them and what's wrong for them. So there's no more, let's try this and see if it's helpful. They will know, this is who I am, and this is what it will be helpful for me.
Well, it's interesting you say that, picking up on the whole genome sequence, it's like, okay, well, we've sequenced all 3 billion nucleotides. It's stored securely. You own the data. So, just having that secure storage, like you would be surprised how many organizations I've spoken to with members who would say things like, yeah, I was part of that DNA study a few years ago, but I don't know where my data is. Right.
Yep.
So,
who owns the data?
So, okay.
Who owns
we got to fix it.
Right.
You own the data. That's the answer. Right. And that's right. That's right. And so that's like secure storage, for life. That's, really at the core of what Sequencing.com is doing. Again, secure genetic data management for the entire family. So now you can make this unparalleled decision making process in a way where your data is stored in a HIPAA compliant fashion. And you mentioned newborn, and my I think we talked previously. I have a new daughter. I have a daughter. She's 7 months old, and my wife and I were both sequenced, and Brooke was sequenced as well. And there were some things that we were concerned about initially, just with weight gain, and so we referred to the pediatrician, and one of the first things that he asked is like, are you guys sure you're not related, right? Like, are you cousins? And so basically what he's saying is there a higher likelihood that Brooke has a rare disease? And I was like, I can answer that question. Like, well, no, we're not. But also, here's the DNA proof, and here are the things that we can be looking at. And so now you have a much more targeted conversation around, the treatment plan in collaboration with the medical expert team, right? So you've got this, fully comprehensive next generation rare disease screen where, it's over 15,000 variants that we know of today that you can actually run a deep dive on. So because we have the whole genome, we can let the genome speak for itself. And you've experienced this where you've actually searched using Genome Explorer, where you're effectively, as the user, creating your own digital panel, because you can query, for aspects of your genetics based on, risk, based on gene name, based on condition. And so really, that's the whole, sequence once, query often. And then with this health scan software solution that we've developed, you can actually get weekly updates. So you're plugged into the research discoveries, which it seems some weeks there's thousands of studies published around new variants. And so that is really something in terms of, what you were discussing before, that is creating a lifelong health strategy informed by your genetics, but updated based on the latest research that's in the public domain. And so you'd really, like in the past, we're waiting, decades potentially to get this knowledge translation, whereas now you can get it within weeks of the studies being published. So, I mean, imagine you had this information 20 years ago. How might your life have been different?
It would have been very different. And I think that doctors would have recognized sooner what I was going through, what was going on, ways to treat me. There would have been less complications, less medical adverse drug reactions. I've even looked at what is right for me to eat nutritionally. And, people say, oh, tomatoes are great for you. Well, for me, they're not. And knowing, like, there's certain things that I should be eating, certain things I shouldn't be eating, but that's different for every single human. Knowing what's right for you medically, it's just as important as knowing the right things to eat and the right things to have in your environment, and the right things for your family. If okay, we have some kind of inherited cardiac disease, and I see it in my genetics. If you have any offspring or siblings and they have children, knowing this is something in our family genetics, this could be passed around. What do we do about it? How do we prevent it, and or have it onset later so that we don't have as many challenges with it, is really helpful and refreshing. And it's a futuristic science that's available today. And like you said, the price has come way down. I mean, I remember just less than 10 years ago, it was $10,000, $12,000 to get genome sequencing to try to get a full sequence. It's before that, it was like up in the millions of dollars. And now it's being offered for $400. It's incredible to have that much leap in science that we actually have the ability to obtain something that can go with us for the rest of our life here on Earth.
Amazing. Well, and one of the other things I think I haven't given you a sneak peek of yet, but you and your community will get access to, is a sequencing AI, right? So you can.
I love AI.
Go ahead.
I love AI, and I love the fact that AI can look at a whole group of us, say we all have the same disease, and RSD, take my disease, and it can look at all of us and compare our genetics and then say, hey, here's some key things in common. Here's some things to look at. Here's some suggestions based on looking at the whole silo of people with this disease. And or, hey, I looked at your silo and I looked at this other silo, and there's some overlap in these two different genetic conditions, where a treatment that's helping this condition and this condition can be seen and connected faster than humans can do it. AI can look at that data and say, oh, wait a second, here's a connection. Let's do something with this. And here's an alert. Let's go forward and find out that this treatment can actually help this other disease that we weren't even looking at, because so many data points are in the system, and the AI can pull it out when it would take us lifetimes to do that data analysis.
Yeah. Well, and then you can even translate that into, an actionable plan, right? So, you find out where your risks are, and then you proceed with your preventative plan with those risks in mind, such that, you say, okay, let's say my 10-year health goal is to align my biological age with my chronological age, or maybe even reduce it. Based on my DNA, if that's my 10-year goal, let's say, what's my weekly plan, right? In terms of developing the habits that are specific to nurture my nature, so to speak. So it's a really exciting time. And I think, that's why, Sequencing.com is so, excited to be collaborating with innovative partners, such as yourself, such as the International Pain Foundation, because there's a huge need for this. And I mean, I'll even say our founder, CEO founder, Dr. Brandon Colby, he himself is afflicted with a rare disease, epidermolysis bullosa simplex. For those who aren't familiar, it's basically a ultra temperature sensitive, to the point where if you can imagine holding a tennis racket, just to play tennis racket, you would break out in extreme blisters because of the temperature sensitivity of the tissue. And for his entire life, he never knew the underlying cause genetically until, well, fast forward 30, 40 years, he became a medical geneticist, started Sequencing.com, and created the softwares that we're sharing with the rare disease community. And he learned actually the variants that he had, as it turns out, he was homozygous recessive for the trait, which is not what he thought. He thought, like, typically that disease is like a dominant trait. So, the odds of him passing that on would have been like, 50-50 if he was going to have children. So that really affects his family planning. Whereas now, because he's had his wife screened as well, it's basically the chance is zero of passing on, the disease itself. But, certainly 100% chance of passing on the carrier gene, right? So, I mean, that's really compelling in terms of, how you're planning for the next generation. And so, the more people that we talk to in the rare community, such as yourself, it's just absolutely incredible. I actually just spoke with a lady that'll be doing a separate podcast on, who was essentially, bedridden for 13 years, and using the platform. Well, I just reconnected with her after 10 months of our initial conversation. She said, no, I've basically, with my medical community, have, figured out through a nutrigenomics approach to circumnavigate my issue. And I've been traveling, and I haven't been able to travel for the last 13 years. So, so I'm really excited to have her on the show and share her episode with you. And I think that's what's really exciting about, what we're doing here, is we're really building community to connect that rare disease, greater cause and awareness. So, really excited to be launching this initiative with you. And, for those that are listening, we put together a solution uniquely for the International Pain Foundation. We put together a specific landing page, and we're going to follow up with, information through emails and blogs. And, the nice thing too is we've been working with Barby to even put together a donation plan, so that, every kit that's purchased, we'll be making a donation to the International Pain Foundation. And we want to do more of this with the different rare communities. So yeah, I mean, it's a really, really exciting time. And, when I think about, Barbie, your journey and, the personal insights that you shared, and then the broader impact. What I'd love to kind of guide our discussion to now, just while we finish up, is, how has this changed your world? What are the bigger picture items that you are focused on now in terms of, public outreach? I know you said you were applying for public office. Really, I think the ultimate question I'm asking is, if you look towards the future, what kind of legacy do you want to leave in the field of, rare disease, chronic pain management, and beyond? What excites you most about the future, and what are you doing to make that future a reality?
Well, I am excited about the future, especially when it comes to connecting our lives with genetics and really understanding who we are individually. One of my passions is individualized care. And I believe that the way that we get to individualized care is knowing who we are. And that is done through the genetic testing, seeing your whole genome sequenced and being able to plug that in, rely on that and go back to it, because your DNA never changes. And the new things that are coming online are just tools that you can plug in and say, is this going to help? Is that going to help? And look, like I said, I've been working on legislation for newborn babies, and we've stuck to some of the data. But when you have a genetic test such that Sequencing.com does for a human that they can take for the rest of their life and have that data, is so important. And I would love to see all newborn babies, when their parents want them to have this testing, they have the access to get the testing done. And even if your insurance doesn't cover it, a lot of people would pay the $400 versus having all of the challenges that you would face throughout your lifetime, to have that data and information that goes with you for the rest of your life. So I would like to see legislation that supports genomic testing and start at birth with it. And also the fact that it's available now, even if you're 40 or 50 or 60 years old, knowing what you have genetically and also what you could pass down to future relatives is hugely important. And I have worked on bills in the past, both as someone who was being served by a leader who was bringing a bill through, and as someone who has written bills and gotten them passed into law. And so to become a lawmaker, where I actually get to vote and say, this is going to change the future of humanity and society, and what we are doing as patients, caregivers, provider, industry, and being able to pass those types of laws so that people can get access sooner to these life-saving, life-giving testing with genome sequencing is an absolute goal of mine. And I know that it will benefit society. I've seen it benefit my life and on a personal level. And I want to have that opportunity for other people to also have that opportunity to improve their lives and have all of this data that's theirs, and it's safe and it's secure, and it gets them the care that they need faster so that they have less health challenges going through life. To me, that's huge, and it's one of my number one goals.
Amazing. Amazing. What an incredible journey. I'm so grateful, Barbie, that you were able to share your time with me today. And I'm really looking forward to launching our partnership, and I think ahead to where we might be in November, as an example.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe we'll definitely schedule episode 2 around that time.
That would be
We'd love to hear how your political endeavors are going, and obviously support you through November. Just for the sake of our listeners, I know probably maybe a lot of them already know you, because I know we're going to be sending this out to the International Pain Foundation community. But for those who are hearing your story for the first time, Barbie, how do people find you?
You can find me at my personal website, barbyingle.com. I also do projects with my husband on kenandbarbie.com, and Barbie's with a Y, Ingle with an
Mhm.
I. And then for International Pain Foundation, you just go to internationalpain.org. That's the website. And then I and the foundation are both on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. So please reach out in any form that you have. And also, if you've had genomic testing yourself and it's impacted your life, leave that in a comment. When you see this video, leave a comment and let us know how it's impacted your life for the better, and let other people know why they should get the testing done as well.
Amazing. Well, Barbie, again, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to our next conversation.
I thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing how this is impacting other people's lives like it has mine. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this enlightening episode of Sequencing Stories. Today, we had the privilege of hearing Barby Ingle's inspiring story, from her personal battles with rare disease to her groundbreaking work with the International Pain Foundation. We've explored how genetic testing, particularly through Sequencing.com, is revolutionizing individualized care, offering hope and tangible solutions to those with chronic pain and rare diseases. We hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights and practical knowledge that could change your life. Barby's journey is a testament to the power of resilience, advocacy, and innovation in healthcare. If her story has touched you, please share this episode with others who might benefit from her experiences and insights. Stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to uncover the remarkable ways genetics is shaping our world. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and share the love. Thank you for listening.